I told you not to mess with me! This is what you get!
The garage smelled like a sickening mixture of high-grade carnauba wax and the sharp, chemical sting of unleaded gasoline when I lifted the heavy steel door and froze. My hand was still hovering over the keypad. My breath caught in a throat suddenly gone dry. It was a physical reaction, a muscle memory from a life I thought I had left behind in the sand and heat of foreign deserts. My blood ran cold, the temperature in my veins dropping to match the ice settling in my stomach. My midnight blue Lamborghini Huracan, my sanctuary, my engineering masterpiece, the only thing I had bought for myself after 20 years of service, looked like it had gone 12 rounds with a wrecking ball. The windshield, usually a pristine pane of glass that framed the open road, was spiderwebbed into a million diamonds of destruction, a chaotic mosaic of violence. The hood, once a smooth, aggressive curve of aerodynamic perfection that I had polished just yesterday, was cratered with deep, ugly dents. It looked like the surface of the moon, if the moon had been beaten with a lead pipe. The side mirrors hung by their internal wires like broken limbs, swinging slightly in the draft from the opening door. For a full beat, the only sound in the world was the soft, rhythmic tick of cooling metal and the shallow, jagged rhythm of my own breath. I didn't scream. I didn't throw my keys. I just stood there, processing the carnage with the detached, hyper-focused clarity of a man who has seen worse things than broken glass, but never in his own home, never in the one place that was supposed to be safe. Then I saw it, lying on the polished concrete floor, right next to a jagged piece of shattered headlight lens, was a fleck of bright, obnoxious pink nail polish stuck to a tiny shard of glass. My stomach tightened into a knot. I knew exactly who that belonged to. There was only one person in Maple Ridge Estates who wore that specific, aggressive shade of, look at me, pink, while simultaneously demanding everyone else blend into the beige background. Karen Whitmore, the HOA secretary who had been timing my garage door intervals with a stopwatch, preaching property values like they were scripture from a holy book, and calling me a show-off soldier to anyone who would listen at the community mailbox. I have stared down mortars and cleared rooms in hostile territory with steadier hands than I had in that moment. But this wasn't combat. This was personal. This was a violation of the peace treaty I had signed with myself the day I hung up my uniform. I reached for my phone, my fingers moving with a precise muscle memory of a man preparing for engagement. I pulled up the security feed, rewound the timeline to 2:07 a.m., and there she was. The infrared camera captured her in ghostly black and white, hefting a sledgehammer over her shoulder like she was a crowned queen of the cul-de-sac, ready to execute my car for the crime of existing. But before we dive into the wreckage and the war that followed, let's rewind. Because to understand why a middle-aged woman would take a sledgehammer to a $300,000 supercar, you have to understand the neighborhood. And you have to understand me. When I first moved into Maple Ridge Estates, it was supposed to be the finish line. It was everything a soldier dreams of after 2 decades of sand, sweat, shouting, and the constant, deafening noise of machinery. I wanted quiet. I wanted predictable. I wanted a cul-de-sac lined with ancient oaks, the kind of place where sprinklers hiss rhythmically at sunrise and kids ride scooters on the asphalt until their mothers call them in for dinner. For 15 years, the loudest thing I dealt with was the hum of a neighbor's lawnmower or the occasional bark of a dog. It was boring. And God, I loved the boredom. I soaked in it. I let the silence fill the cracks in my psyche that the war had left behind. I bought this house because it felt like a fortress of solitude, a place where the rules of engagement were simple. Be polite, keep your lawn green, and wave to your neighbors. Then, somebody decided we needed a homeowners association to protect our investments. And with that HOA came Karen. She didn't just join the board, she weaponized it. But even with her patrolling the streets, I kept to myself. I was a ghost in my own neighborhood, a man who smiled, nodded, and kept his blinds drawn. I wasn't looking for a fight. I had fought enough for 3 lifetimes. That changed the day the Lamborghini rolled into the driveway. To some people, a car like that is a toy. It's a flex. It's a way to scream, look at my bank account. But for me, it was a reward. It was a tangible result of saving every hazardous duty bonus, every combat paycheck, every disability compensation check that I didn't need for bills. It was a result of a lucky stock investment made during a lull in deployment. It was a dream I had held onto during the darkest nights in Kandahar. It was a midnight blue Huracan Evo, 5.20 V10, naturally aspirated. Pure engineering poetry. It wasn't just a machine, it was a masterpiece of control and power. When I parked it in my driveway that first weekend, sunlight glinting off a ceramic coating, I didn't feel like a show-off. I felt like I had finally closed a chapter between war and peace. I felt like I had survived long enough to enjoy the beauty of the world. The neighbors mostly loved it. The teenage kids from down the block would stop on their bikes and gawk, their eyes wide with that pure, unadulterated joy that only a supercar can bring to a 14-year-old. Tom, the retired teacher across the street, gave me a thumbs up and asked if he could hear the engine sometime. Everyone accepted it. Everyone except Karen. She appeared that first afternoon like a storm cloud drifting into a clear summer sky. She walked up the driveway, clipboard in hand, her heels clicking on the concrete like a ticking clock. "Beautiful car," she said flatly, her sunglasses hiding her eyes, though I could feel them scanning the vehicle like a customs officer searching for contraband. Though I'm not sure a commercial-grade vehicle aligns with HOA guidelines. I blinked, wiping a smudge off the rear fender with a microfiber cloth. Commercial grade? It's a sports car, Karen. Not a bulldozer. It's for driving, not for hauling gravel. Well, she sniffed, adjusting the strap of her purse. Some of us find that such displays can affect property values. It implies grandeur. It implies a lifestyle that doesn't quite fit the family aesthetic of Maple Ridge. It's a bit aggressive, isn't it? I looked at her, really looked at her. For the first time, I saw the tightness in her jaw, the white-knuckle grip on her pen. I saw a woman who was terrified of anything she couldn't control. Anything that shone brighter than her meticulously manicured hydrangeas. "It's just a car, Karen," I said, keeping my voice low and even. "It brings me joy. That's all." "Joy," she repeated, the word tasting sour in her mouth. "Just make sure your joy doesn't violate the noise ordinance, Mr. Davis. We have families here. We value peace." She turned and walked away, scribbling something furiously on her clipboard. I watched her go, feeling a prickle on the back of my neck. It was the same feeling I used to get when walking down a silent alleyway overseas, the feeling of being watched by eyes you couldn't see. I didn't know it then, but she wasn't looking for peace. She was looking for submission. And standing there in my garage, looking at the ruin of my dream, I realized she had decided that if she couldn't force me to submit, she would destroy the thing that made me stand out. I looked back down at the pink nail polish on the floor. The garage, my sanctuary, had been breached. The silence was broken, and as I stared at the shattered glass, the yellow level alert status I had lived with for 20 years shifted. The calm, civilian version of me receded, and the soldier stepped forward. She wanted a war? She had no idea who she had just declared on. Her name was Karen Whitmore, but around the dinner tables and hushed front porch conversations of Maple Ridge Estates, she was known simply as the Warden. To the uninitiated, she looked like the quintessential suburban grandmother. Mid-50s, always dressed in pastel cardigans and pressed slacks, with blonde curls sprayed into a helmet so stiff it could likely deflect shrapnel. She wore oversized designer sunglasses that hid her eyes, making her expression impossible to read, which I suspect was entirely the point. But to those of us living under her regime, Karen was a tyrant in pearls. She was the self-appointed guardian of neighborhood integrity, the HOA secretary who wielded her clipboard not as a tool for organization, but as a weapon of mass destruction. She didn't just enforce the rules. She worshipped them. She had memorized the covenants, conditions, and restrictions, CC and RS, the way a fundamentalist memorizes scripture, and she interpreted them with a cruelty that would have made a medieval inquisitor blush. I've served under tough commanding officers. I've had drill sergeants who could peel the paint off a wall with a whisper and make a grown man cry for his mother with a single glance. But those men and women had a purpose. Their harshness was designed to keep you alive, to forge you into something stronger. Karen's harshness was different. It was hollow. It was a desperate power trip of a woman who had no control over her own life. So she decided to strangle the joy out of everyone else's. Our first interaction set the tone for the war to come. It happened about 3 weeks after I moved in, long before the Lamborghini arrived to shatter the peace completely. I was walking Duke, my German shepherd, Duke is a retired military working dog, a K9 who has sniffed out IEDs and guarded sleeping platoons in the worst places on Earth. He's disciplined, calm, and walks with a loose leash because he knows exactly where he's supposed to be, right by my left knee. We were passing the community park when Karen stepped out from behind a perfectly trimmed hedge like an ambushed predator. She didn't say hello. She didn't say good morning. She stepped directly into my path, forcing me to stop and pointed a manicured finger at Duke. "Do you have an approved leash length on that animal?" she asked. Her voice was high, nasal, and dripping with condescension. I blinked, genuinely confused. "Excuse me?" "The bylaws," she said, tapping her clipboard with her pen. Section 4, paragraph B. All canine companions must be restrained on a leash no longer than 6 feet to ensure the safety of the community. That lead looks like a retractable 20-footer. Those are strictly prohibited. I looked down at the standard leather lead in my hand. "It's a 6-foot lead, ma'am. And even if it wasn't, he's heel-trained. He's not going anywhere." She scoffed, a short, sharp sound like a staple gun firing. "Training is irrelevant. Compliance is mandatory. And frankly, that breed is aggressive. We have children in this neighborhood. Having a weaponized animal patrol the streets sends a wrong message." I felt the heat rise up my neck. Weaponized animal? Duke is a service dog. He's a veteran. He's probably done more for this country's safety than you have for this neighborhood. That was the wrong thing to say. I saw her jaw tighten, the muscles working beneath her powdery foundation. "I am the secretary of the Homeowners Association," she announced, emphasizing every syllable as if she were declaring herself the Queen of England. "I ensure that this neighborhood doesn't devolve into a slum. You might be used to chaos where you come from, Mr. Davis, but here, we value order. I'll be noting this interaction." She scribbled something on her pad, ripped the page off, and thrust it at me. It was a formal warning for a hostile tone and potential leash violation. I stared at the paper, half expecting a hidden camera crew to jump out and tell me I was on a prank show. Nobody came. I laughed it off then, crumpling the paper and tossing it into the nearest bin. You meet plenty of petty tyrants in the military, usually supply clerks or junior officers with too much rank and not enough sense, but you learn to ignore them. I didn't know it yet, but you can't ignore Karen. She isn't just an annoyance, she is a siege engine. Over the next few months, I watched her operate. She was relentless. She issued citations for trash cans left out 5 minutes past the pickup window. She measured grass height with an actual ruler she kept in her purse. If your fescue was a 1/4 inch over 2-inch standard, you got a fine. When the Burgers, a nice family across the street, hung a patriotic banner on their porch for Memorial Day, Karen declared it unauthorized signage and threatened to put a lien on their house if they didn't remove it within 24 hours. I overheard her once at a board meeting. I had started attending just to see the circus, whispering to Tom Harris, the HOA president. Tom was a decent guy, a retired high school history teacher who just wanted to keep the community solvent. But he was weak. He hated confrontation. "They need guidance, Tom," Karen hissed, eyeing a room full of tired homeowners. "If we give them an inch, they'll park RVs on our lawns and paint their shutters neon green. We are the thin line between civilization and anarchy." Tom just sighed, rubbing his temples. "Just try to be a little less aggressive, Karen. We're getting complaints about the complaints." "People complain when they know they're wrong," she shot back. The rest of the board wasn't much better. Sarah Lopez, the treasurer, was a realtor who only cared that the property value stayed high, so she could farm listings. Bob Carter, the VP, was a gruff Vietnam vet who mostly just wanted to fish and let Karen do the dirty work, so he didn't have to deal with the paperwork. They all tolerated her because she was willing to do the job nobody else wanted, being the bad guy. But Karen didn't just want to be the bad guy. She wanted an empire, and she found her enemy in me. Why me? Maybe it was because I didn't flinch when she yelled. Maybe it was because I kept my house perfectly maintained, denying her the satisfaction of a legitimate citation. Or maybe it was simply because I was a single man in his 40s living alone in a 4-bedroom house, and to a woman like Karen, that didn't fit the narrative. She decided I was suspicious. She decided I was other. The low-level harassment was constant. She'd walk past my house 3 times a day. She'd stop and stare at my windows. Once, I caught her crouching near my property line, taking pictures of a patch of clover in my lawn. The next day, a letter arrived. Notice of weed infestation. Corrective action required within 48 hours. I almost laughed. The VA contracted landscaping crew mowed my yard twice a week. It was pristine, but Karen wasn't looking at the grass. She was testing the fence. She was probing my defenses, looking for a weak point. "Ignore it, John," Tom told me when I called him, sounding exhausted. "Clover isn't even classified as a weed in our bylaws. Karen is just overenthusiastic." Overenthusiastic? I repeated. That's one word for it. Another word is harassment. "Look," he said, lowering his voice. "Between you and me, she's been issuing violations without board approval. We've warned her twice. If she keeps it up, we'll vote her out at the next annual meeting. Just keep your head down until then." I appreciated his calm, but I knew better. Bullies like Karen don't stop because of a warning. Warnings are just noise to them. Consequences are the only language they speak. And then came the turning point. The day the Lamborghini arrived. It was like throwing raw meat into a shark tank. The moment that midnight blue engine cover reflected the sun, Karen shifted gears. She stopped being a nuisance and started being a hunter. The car represented everything she hated. Excess, individuality, and a kind of success she couldn't quantify or control. To her, a retired soldier shouldn't be driving a supercar. It broke her worldview. It made me a target. She didn't know it, but she was making a critical tactical error. She thought she was picking a fight with a lonely, isolated bachelor who would eventually fold under the pressure of fines and sternly worded letters. She didn't realize she was poking a bear who had spent 20 years learning how to survive in hostile territory. The skirmishes were over. The war was about to begin. To me, the car wasn't flex. It wasn't a midlife crisis manifested in carbon fiber and aluminum. It was a reward. It was a tangible result of surviving things most people couldn't imagine without needing a stiff drink afterward. I bought it after years of saving hazardous duty pay, deployment bonuses, disability compensation I hadn't touched, and a lucky tech stock investment that paid off right when I got my discharge papers. It was a midnight blue Huracan Evo 5.20 V10, naturally aspirated. Pure engineering poetry. To the uninitiated, it's just a fast car. To me, it was a masterpiece of control. In the military, your equipment belongs to the government. Your rifle, your truck, your uniform, even your body in a way, is property of Uncle Sam. But this was mine. When I parked in my driveway that first weekend, sunlight glinting off the ceramic coating like liquid sapphire, I felt like I had finally closed a chapter between war and peace. The reaction from a neighborhood was exactly what you'd expect from normal, well-adjusted human beings. The teenage kids on the end of the block would stop their bikes and gawk, mouths open, asking if it was fast, yes, and if I was a race car driver, no. The adults would smile and wave. Tom, the HOA president, gave me a thumbs up from across the street while he watered his petunias. Even the mail carrier stopped to take a picture. Everyone seemed to appreciate it. Everyone except Karen. She appeared that afternoon like a storm cloud drifting into a picnic. Clipboard clutched her chest like a shield. I was in the driveway, wiping down the rear fender with a microfiber cloth, simply enjoying the lines of the machine. I didn't hear her approach until her shadow fell over my hands. "Beautiful car," she said flatly. The tone suggested it was anything but. Her eyes, hidden behind those massive sunglasses, scanned the vehicle like a customs officer searching for illicit contraband. Though I'm not sure a commercial-grade vehicle aligns with the aesthetic guidelines of Maple Ridge Estates. I paused, cloth in hand. Commercial grade? Karen, it's a sports car. Not a bulldozer. It's a passenger vehicle. "Well," she sniffed, her lips thinning into a line of disapproval. "It's loud. It's flashy. Some of us find that such displays can affect property values. It implies transients, new money. It changes the character of the street. I smiled the way you smile when your rifle jams during a training exercise, tight, forced, and impatient. Good thing I'm not selling property then, isn't it? And as for the character of the street, I think a little Italian engineering dresses the place up nicely." Her jaw twitched. She didn't like being challenged, and she certainly didn't like humor. She scribbled something furiously on her clipboard, the pen scratching loud enough to be heard over the distant hum of a lawnmower. "Just be mindful of the noise ordinances, Mr. Davis. We have families here. We don't need a racetrack. in our cul-de-sac. She walked away without another word, but the air behind her felt charged. That was our first real skirmish regarding the car. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. Over the next few weeks, Karen's patrols became a daily ritual. I'd catch her walking slowly past my house, pretending to check the community mailbox while her head was swiveled 180 degrees toward my garage. Once, I saw her crouch near the edge of my lawn, taking pictures of a patch of clover with her phone. The next day, a letter arrived. Notice of weed infestation. Corrective action required within 48 hours. I almost laughed. The VA contracted landscaping crew mode and treated my yard twice a week. My grass was greener than the fairway at the local country club. But Karen wasn't looking at the grass. She was testing me. She was firing warning shots to see if I would flinch. When I called Tom about it, he groaned audibly. "Ignore it, John. Clover isn't even classified as a weed in our bylaws. Karen is just overenthusiastic. Overenthusiastic." I repeated, looking out my window at Karen, who was currently measuring the Johnson family's hedges with a tape measure. That's one word for it. Another word is obsessive. "Look," he said, lowering his voice. "Between you and me, she's been issuing violations without board approval. We've warned her twice. If she keeps it up, we'll vote her out. Just keep your head down." I appreciated his calm, but I knew bullies like Karen. Warnings don't stop them. Consequences do. And since she hadn't faced any consequences yet, she escalated. By early summer, her obsession with me, and specifically the car, became the focal point of her existence. She issued citations for things that weren't even in the handbook. First, it was the noise. Excessive decibel level, because I idled the car for 30 seconds to let the oil cycle before driving. Then, it was the unauthorized business claim. One Saturday, I was in my driveway detailing the car. Foam cannon, 2-bucket method. The works. It's therapeutic for me. I had music playing low, Duke lie in the shade, and I was just working the soap over the hood. Suddenly, Karen was there. "Excuse me," she snapped, arms crossed. "You cannot operate a commercial garage in a residential zone." I blinked, dripping sponge in hand. "I'm washing my car, Karen." "You have equipment." She gestured at my pressure washer. "You have chemicals. You are obviously running a detailing business." I've seen people stop and look. That's solicitation. I stared at her, genuinely amazed by the mental gymnastics. "Karen, the only client here is me. The only car here is mine. Unless you see me charging myself $20 to vacuum the mats, there is no business." She raised her phone and started filming. "I'm documenting this violation. Industrial activity is strictly prohibited." I straightened slowly, my military calm kicking in. In the Army, you learn that when someone is screaming or acting irrational, you get quieter. You get still. "You're trespassing, ma'am. Please leave my property." "This is public enforcement," she declared, stepping closer. "As HOA secretary, I have the authority to ensure compliance." "Then comply with my request to get off my driveway," I said evenly, "or I call the actual authorities for trespassing." Her lips tightened until they were white. "You'll regret this," she hissed. She turned and marched off, but by Monday I had 3 new violation letters in my mailbox. Excessive noise, commercial activity, and a new favorite, failure to maintain closed garage policy. There was no such policy. Tom confirmed it later, sounding exhausted. "She's literally making them up, John," he said. "How is that even allowed?" "It's not," I told him. "But she doesn't care about what's allowed. She cares about what she can get away with." The board tolerated her because the paperwork scared them more than the confrontation. But I wasn't scared of confrontation. I was beginning to realize that Karen's need for control wasn't about the rules at all. It was about power. And when people like that see something they can't have, like peace or success, or a car that costs more than their annual salary, they don't want to join in. They want to destroy it. Every day after that, I noticed her presence. The glint of her phone lens through her blinds across the street. The slow, deliberate pace of her sedan as she circled the block, slowing down every time she passed my house. Once, I caught her writing notes while staring at my garage door timer app on her phone. She was literally clocking how long the door stayed open. Most nights, I sat on the porch, a beer in hand, Duke at my feet, watching the sunset. Peace had a different flavor now, bitter at the edges. I'd seen men unravel in combat zones from the stress of constant surveillance. I could see the same madness creeping behind her polite smile. I knew this wasn't over. Karen's obsession was brewing over envy and fermenting into delusion. She was testing the fences, looking for a way in, and when she realized she couldn't use the rulebook to break me, I had a feeling she would try something much more direct. I just didn't realize she would use a sledgehammer to do it. I wasn't angry yet. In the Army, we called it yellow level, a state of mind where you are calm, relaxed, but acutely aware of your surroundings. It's a mental space you live in when you're outside the wire, but not yet in a firefight. You check the exits when you enter a room. You watch the hands of the people walking toward you. You notice when the birds stop singing. I knew bullies like Karen. I'd met them in basic training, in the command tent, and in local villages halfway across the world. They don't stop when you ignore them. They escalate. They mistake silence for weakness and patience for submission. So, I stopped treating this like a petty neighborhood dispute and started treating it like an operation. If Karen wanted to play games with surveillance and documentation, she was about to learn that she was playing against a professional. The first step was hardening the perimeter. I upgraded my security system. I didn't tell Tom or Bob or anyone on the board. I just did it. I replaced the standard doorbell camera, which was too low resolution to catch license plates, with high-definition motion-activated cameras equipped with night vision and off-site cloud storage. I placed one overlooking the driveway, one inside the garage, and two covering the blind spots of the house. I didn't turn them on to catch a thief. I turned them on to study my enemy. And what I saw on those feeds over the next week was chilling. It wasn't the behavior of a concerned neighbor. It was the behavior of a stalker. I'd catch her on the feed at odd hours. 11:30 p.m., standing on the sidewalk, just staring at my house. 5 a.m., pacing back and forth in front of my driveway while walking her toy poodle, stopping to shine a small flashlight toward my garage windows. She wasn't just looking for violations. She was looking for patterns. She was learning my schedule. She was checking when the lights went out, when Duke went out for his final bathroom break, and when I left for the gym. But the physical stalking was only half the battle. The other half was psychological. Karen began a whisper campaign designed to isolate me from the rest of the herd. It started subtly. I went to the local coffee shop near the highway, a place I visited 3 times a week. The barista, a nice kid who lived 2 streets over, leaned over the counter while handing me my black coffee. "Hey, Mr. Davis," he said, his voice lowered. "Is everything okay at your place?" I frowned. "Yeah, everything's fine." "Why?" He looked uncomfortable, wiping the counter with a rag. "It's just, Karen was in here yesterday, holding court with some of the other neighborhood moms. She was telling people that you're running an illegal chop shop out of your garage. Said she's seen shady characters coming and going at all hours." I laughed, a short, bitter sound. "The only shady characters are the Amazon delivery drivers and the physical therapist who comes to help with my knee rehab." She didn't stop there. The kid continued, wincing. She was saying, "Look," she was saying you're unstable, that you have severe PTSD, and that she's worried you might snap. She told people she's trying to get the HOA to force a mental health evaluation for community safety. That hit me harder than the accusations about the car. It was a low blow, weaponizing my service and the very real struggles veterans face to paint me as a ticking time bomb. She was trying to scare people. She wanted the neighbors to look at me not as John the guy with the cool car, but as John the dangerous threat. I thanked the kid and walked out, my grip on the coffee cup tight enough to deform a cardboard. Karen wasn't just harassing me anymore. She was trying to destroy my reputation. She was shaping the narrative so that when the conflict finally exploded, I would already look like the villain. When I got home, I found Tom waiting on my porch. He looked 10 years older than he had a month ago. "We had another meeting," he said, rubbing his temples. "Karen is threatening to sue the board if we don't take action against your industrial activities. She's claiming your car chemicals pose a fire risk to the entire block. So now I'm an arsonist?" I asked, leaning against a railing. She didn't use that word, but she hinted at it. "She's relentless, John. We're trying to vote her out. But until the annual meeting in November, our hands are tied by the bylaws. We can't remove a board member without a special session and a 75% vote. Then I'll handle her myself," I muttered, Tom frowned, looking up at me with genuine concern. Don't. That's what she wants. She wants a reaction. She's the kind who plays the victim the moment someone pushes back. If you yell at her, she'll have the police here in 5 minutes claiming assault. I nodded, keeping my face impassive. I know, Tom. I'm not going to yell at her. Good. Just ignore her. She'll get bored eventually. I watched him walk away, a decent man paralyzed by bureaucracy. He was wrong. People like Karen don't get bored. They get desperate, and desperate people make mistakes. That night, I sat in my living room with the lights off, watching the monitor. Around midnight, the motion sensor pinged. A silhouette appeared on the screen, passing near the fence line. It was too far for facial identification, but the gait was unmistakable. Stiff, deliberate, entitled. She stopped at the edge of my driveway. She pulled out her phone and took a photo of my house. Then, she looked directly at the camera I had installed above the garage door. She didn't know it was recording in high-definition infrared. She probably thought it was a dummy unit. She stared right into the lens and smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was a smile of a predator who thinks the prey is trapped. It was a promise. She was done writing letters. She was done measuring grass. She was ready to make a move. I felt a cold clarity settle over me. In a war zone, you learn that silence isn't peace. It's just a space between attacks. Karen had declared her war in paperwork in whispers, but she hadn't realized something crucial. She thought she was isolating me. She thought she was cornering a helpless victim. She didn't know she was walking into a kill box I had spent weeks preparing. I opened my old deployment chest at the foot of my bed. Inside were my medals, photographs of friends I'd lost, and one small black notebook, my field log. On the inside cover, I'd once written a line for my commanding officer. Don't fight anger with anger. Fight it with preparation. So I prepared. I checked the camera angles again. I backed up the footage of her stalking to 3 different hard drives. I ensured the timestamps were synced with the atomic clock. Your move, Karen. I whispered to the empty room. I didn't have to wait long. She was about to make the biggest mistake of her life, and I had a front row seat to record it. I set the trap by simply living my life, or at least the version of my life Karen thought she understood. She believed I was a creature of habit, a lonely bachelor with a rigid schedule. She was right about the schedule, but she was wrong about the loneliness. I had my safeguards. It started on a Saturday morning that smelled like rain and ozone. I loaded a weekend bag into the trunk of my daily driver, a reliable, nondescript Honda Accord. I made a show of it. I whistled while I walked the mailbox. I brought Duke out and loaded him into the back seat, making sure his head was visible through the window. I wanted the neighborhood to know John Davis is leaving. The house is empty. As I pulled out of the driveway, I glanced at the house across the street. Sure enough, the blinds in Karen's living room twitched. A flash of blonde hair, the glint of spectacles, and the inevitable rays of a smartphone. She was logging my departure. I gave a friendly wave to window, purely out of spite. She didn't wave back. I drove 2 hours north to my sister's place in Cleveland. It was a planned visit. She needed help fixing her deck, and I needed to get away from the suffocating gaze of the warden. But even as I hammered nails and played tag with my nieces, a part of my brain remained back in Maple Ridge Estates, tethered to the silent, invisible tripwires I had laid. I didn't check the cameras while I was away. That was a deliberate choice. If I checked, I would stress. If I stressed, I would react. I needed to trust the system. I needed to let the enemy make her move without interference. I returned Sunday night, just after 7 p.m. The sun had already dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in bruises of purple and charcoal. The cul-de-sac was quiet. That's specific. Heavy suburban silence that feels less like peace and more like a hell breath. Porch lights were flickering on. Blue television glow spilled from living room windows. It was a picture of safety. I parked the Accord, let Duke out to do his business in the backyard, and carried my bag inside. The house felt normal. The air conditioning was humming. The fridge was cycling. Nothing seemed out of place. But then the instinct kicked in. It's hard to explain to civilians. It's a feeling in the base of your skull, a prickling sensation that tells you the air pressure in the room has changed. Something was wrong. I stood in my kitchen listening. Silence. But it was a heavy silence. I walked to the door, connecting the kitchen to the garage. I hadn't planned on checking the car immediately. I was tired, and I wanted a shower, but my hand moved the knob on its own. I opened the door, and the smell hit me first. It wasn't the clean, metallic scent of a well-maintained garage. It was raw, visceral, the sharp, stinging odor of gasoline mixed with hydraulic fluid, and something else, something chemical and sweet like coolant. My heart hammered a single, hard rhythm against my ribs. I flipped the light switch. The fluorescent tubes flickered to life, buzzing angrily, and illuminated a crime scene. My world tilted. My stomach dropped as if I were in a free-falling elevator. My midnight blue Lamborghini Huracan, the machine I had spent years dreaming of, saving for, and caring for like a living thing, looked like a corpse. It was a ruin. The windshield, a piece of glass designed to withstand highway speeds and debris, was spiderwebbed into a milky, opaque sheet of shattered diamonds. The center of the impact was a crater, a focal point of pure violence. I stepped closer, my boots crunching on glass shards that littered the concrete floor like confetti. The hood. God, the hood. The aerodynamic curves were gone. In their place were deep, jagged valleys where metal had been beaten into submission. The paint, that deep, lustrous blue that looked like the ocean at midnight, was chipped and scarred, revealing the raw aluminum bones beneath. Both side mirrors were hanging by their internal wiring, dangling like broken limbs. The front bumper, a masterpiece of Italian design, was cracked down the center, the carbon fiber splitter torn away and lying a few feet from the car. For a long, still minute, I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I just stared. It wasn't just property damage. It was a violation. It was an assault on my sanctuary. This garage was the one place where I felt complete control, where I could tinker and polish and find peace. And someone had come into my home, into my safe zone, and butchered it. I forced myself to breathe. In for seconds. Hold for seconds. Out for seconds. The soldier stepped forward. The victim stepped back. I began to scan the floor. This wasn't random vandalism. A random vandal keys a door or slashes a tire. This was sustained, high-effort destruction. This took time. This took energy. This took hate. And then I saw the smoking gun. Lying on the floor near the rear wheel, glistening under the harsh fluorescent light, was a tiny chip of color. I crouched down, careful not to disturb it. It was a flake of nail polish. Bright, aggressive, bubblegum pink. I looked closer at the jagged edge of the shattered headlight. There was a smear of the same pink residue on the plastic. She had hit it so hard she chipped her manicure. Karen. I stood up, the cold anger settling in my chest like a block of ice. I didn't need to guess anymore. I pulled my phone from my pocket. My hands were steady now, too steady. I opened the security app. I scrolled back through the timeline. Saturday night. Sunday morning. The bar was gray, indicating no motion. Then at 2:07 a.m., the bar turned red. I pressed play. The infrared camera bathed the garage in a ghostly greenish-white light. The side entry door, the one leading to the backyard, opened. It didn't look forced. It opened smoothly. A detail my brain filed away for later. How did she get in? And then she stepped into the frame. Karen Whitmore. She was wearing a thick cardigan and pajamas, her hair tied back in a severe ponytail. In her hands, she dragged a long-handled sledgehammer. It looked heavy for her, but adrenaline is a hell of a drug. She stood there for a moment, just looking at the car. In the grainy black and white footage, her eyes were black pits, but her posture screamed entitlement. She walked a slow circle around the vehicle, running her hand over the fender. It almost looked affectionate. Then she stopped at the front. She adjusted her grip on the hammer. She raised it over her head. I watched, feeling sick as she brought it down. Bam! The camera shook slightly from the impact. On screen, the hood buckled. She didn't stop. She swung again. And again. She moved with a rhythmic, terrifying efficiency. She circled the car, smashing the mirrors, kicking the bumper. She wasn't rushing. She was savoring it. She spent 20 full minutes inside my garage. 20 minutes of unadulterated rage. At the 2:25 a.m. mark, she stopped. She was panting, her chest heaving. She leaned on the hammer, surveying her work. And then, the moment that chilled me to the bone, she looked up, not at the camera. She didn't know it was there, but at the reflection of the ruined car in the garage window. and she smiled. It wasn't a smile of relief. It was a smile of pure, sadistic satisfaction. It was a look of someone who believes they have finally righted a cosmic wrong. She believed she had won. She believed she had taught me a lesson. She turned and walked out the way she came, closing the door softly behind her, leaving me with the wreckage. I lowered the phone. The garage was silent again, save for the buzzing light. My sanctuary was destroyed. My peace was shattered. But as I looked at the ruin of my dream car, the grief faded, replaced by a cold, sharp resolve. She wanted a war. She wanted to teach me a lesson about power. She had just handed me the most potent weapon in the world. Evidence. I didn't touch anything else. I stepped out of the garage, locked the door behind me, and walked into the kitchen. I picked up a landline. I didn't want to use my cell. I needed the recording to be crystal clear on the dispatch side. And dialed 3 numbers. 911, what is your emergency? My name is John Davis. I said, my voice calm, flat, and dangerous. I would like to report a felony break-in and major property destruction. And I have the perpetrator on video. The trap was sprung. Now, it was time to collect the kill. The 911 dispatcher's voice was a lifeline of professional calm in a world that had suddenly gone jagged. Sir, please confirm. Is the intruder still on the premises? No, I said, my eyes fixed on the cratered hood of the Lamborghini. She left hours ago, but the damage is done. It's extensive. Understood. Officers are being dispatched now. Do not confront the individual if they return. Stay inside and wait for law enforcement. Oh, I won't confront her, I said, a dark, humorless smile touching my lips. She already buried herself. I'm just waiting for the funeral. I hung up and immediately dialed my insurance provider, USAA. For those who haven't served, USAA is legendary for a reason. They understand that when a member calls, it's usually serious. I got an agent on the line within 2 minutes. I need to file a claim, I told the agent, my voice steady. Vandalism. Malicious destruction of property. Okay, Mr. Davis. Was this a random act? A break-in? It was targeted. I said, a neighbor broke into my garage with a sledgehammer and totaled a vehicle valued at over $300,000. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Sir, did you say a sledgehammer? Yes, and I have it all on video. Okay, the agent said, his tone shifting from customer service to crisis management. We're going to expedite this. Do not touch anything until the police file their report. We'll have an adjuster out there first thing tomorrow. And Mr. Davis? I'm sorry. I hung up and waited. I didn't pace. I didn't drink. I stood by the front window, watching the street. The cul-de-sac was still deceptively peaceful. Across the street, Karen's house was dark, save for the blue flicker of a television in the den. She was probably sitting there right now, sipping tea, feeling righteous, completely unaware that her life was about to implode. 20 minutes later, the silence was shattered. No sirens. They kept it quiet, likely because I hadn't reported an active threat. But the visual was enough. A patrol cruiser rolled up the curb, its red and blue lights cutting through the darkness, painting the oak trees and manicured lawns in a strobe of emergency colors. Officer Willow stepped out. He was a tall man, mid-30s, with the relaxed, heavy-shouldered walk of a cop who has seen enough human stupidity to no longer be surprised by it. He adjusted his belt, looked at my house, then at Karen's, and walked up the driveway. I met him at the garage door. Mr. Davis, he asked. Dispatch said you had a vandalism dispute. Dispute implies there are 2 sides. I said, opening the door to the garage. This was an execution. Willow walked in. He took 2 steps, saw the Lamborghini, and stopped dead. He let out a low, long whistle. Holy mother of... He trailed off. He walked around the car, his flashlight beam dancing over the shattered glass and twisted metal. He crouched by the bumper, inspecting the damage with a grimace. I've seen rollovers that look better than this. You're sure this wasn't a break-in attempt? Did they try to steal it? Nothing else was touched, I said. My tools are on the wall. My mountain bike is right there. The stereo system in the corner wasn't touched. She came for the car. Willow stood up, his face hardening. I pulled out my phone. Karen Whitmore, HOA secretary, lives directly across the street. I handed him the phone and played the footage. Willow watched in silence. The only sound in the garage was the buzzing of the fluorescent lights and the faint audio from the video. The sickening thud crunch of the sledgehammer hitting the aluminum body panels. When the video reached the point where Karen stopped, looked at the reflection, and smiled, Willow shook his head. "That," he said, handing the phone back to me, "is about as clear-cut as it gets. That's felony property damage, breaking and entering, and possession of criminal tools. In this state, with the value of this car, she's looking at serious time." He looked at me, his eyes assessing. "You want to press charges?" "Every single one you can find," I said. He nodded. "Let's make it official." He tapped his radio. "Dispatch! Show me at the residence. I'm going to need a second unit for transport. We have a suspect in custody shortly." He looked back at me. "Do me a favor. Before we go over there, let's see if we can get a verbal confirmation. Sometimes people dig their own graves faster when they don't know the cops are listening." He pulled out a digital recorder and clicked it on. "Call her." Put on speaker. I dialed Karen's number. It rang twice. Then her voice answered, clipped and defensive. "What do you want, John?" "Someone destroyed my car this weekend while I was out of town." I said, keeping my voice level. "Do you know anything about it?" There was a pause. A thick, heavy static silence. Then a scoff. "Why would I know anything about your stupid car? Unless you finally crashed it driving like a maniac." "I have security footage, Karen. I lied, well, half lied. I had the footage. But I wanted her to think I was bluffing so she'd get arrogant. It shows someone who looks exactly like you entering my garage." Her tone snapped instantly. The facade of polite neighbor vanished, replaced by the venom I knew so well. "Good. I'm glad someone finally did something about that ridiculous show-off machine. You think you're special, don't you? Flashing your money around while the rest of us work honest jobs to maintain this neighborhood. You're just a broken-down soldier living off pity checks." Officer Willow's eyebrows shot up. He mouthed, "Keep her talking." I took a slow breath. "Karen, are you saying you're glad my car is destroyed?" "I'm saying you deserved it," she shrieked. "Every night, I had to look at that thing and remember who you are. A transient, a disruptor. I did this neighborhood a favor. I fixed a problem." Officer Willow stepped forward, leaning toward the phone. "Ma'am, this is Officer Willow with the City Police Department. You just confessed to felony vandalism on a recorded line. We are at your front door. Come out with your hands empty." There was a sharp gasp on the other end. A clatter, like the phone had been dropped. Then the line went dead. Willow looked at me and smirked. "Got her." We walked across the street together. The second patrol car was just pulling up, blocking Karen's driveway. The red and blue lights swept across her house, illuminating the closed blinds. We knocked. No answer. "Police!" Willow shouted, banging on the door with the flat of his hand. "Open up, Miss Whitmore." Nothing. Then I heard the deadbolt slide. The door opened. Karen stood there. She had changed out of her pajamas into slacks and a blouse, as if she were expecting company, but her face was pale, her hands trembling. The sledgehammer was nowhere to be seen, but the guilt was written in the sweat on her upper lip. I don't know what this is about," she stammered, her voice an octave higher than usual. "I was asleep." "Ma'am, we just spoke on the phone," Willow said, his voice dropping into that command tone that brooks no argument. "Step out onto the porch, please." That wasn't me. That was... Someone must have spoofed my number. She looked at me, her eyes narrowing into slits of pure hatred. "He's lying. He's obsessed with me. He's been stalking me." Willow didn't blink. "Turn around and place your hands behind your back." "What? No, you can't touch me. I am the secretary of the Homeowners Association," she screamed, as if the title granted her diplomatic immunity. "I know the mayor. I know the chief of police." "I'm sure the chief will love to see the video," Willow said, spinning her around. The click of the handcuffs was loud in the quiet night. It was a crisp mechanical sound. Click, click. To me, it sounded like a symphony. Karen began to melt down. It wasn't a graceful surrender. She kicked. She screamed. She wailed about injustice, about veteran privilege, about how she was being targeted because she was a woman. "You ruined my life," she shrieked at me as Willow marched her down the steps toward the cruiser. "You set me up. I'll sue you. I'll take your house." By now, the neighborhood had woken up. Curtains were pulled back. Porch lights flicked on. Tom, the HOA president, stepped out onto his lawn in his bathrobe, his mouth hanging open. Sarah, the realtor, was peeking through her blinds. The Burgers were watching from their driveway. They all saw it. They saw the Warden, the woman who had terrorized them over trash cans in Grass Height, being stuffed in the back of a police car like a common criminal. Karen caught sight of me standing by the curb, arms crossed, face impassive. She stopped struggling for a second, her face pressed against the cruiser window, distorted by the glass. She mouthed something. I couldn't hear it, but I could read lips well enough. This isn't over. Willow shut the door, sealing her inside. He walked back to me, adjusting his belt. She's not getting out of this one, John, he said. Felony property damage. Breaking and entering. Confession on tape. It's open and shut. Sleep easy tonight. I tried, I said, watching the cruiser pull away, the lights fading into the distance. I wanted to feel relieved. I wanted to feel that surge of victory. And I did to an extent. The immediate threat was gone. The bully had been punched in the nose by the long arm of the law. But as I walked back to my empty house and looked at the closed garage door where my ruined car sat in the dark, I couldn't shake the feeling that Karen was right about one thing. This wasn't over. People like her don't learn lessons. They only learn new ways to hate. The trap had sprung, yes, but I had a feeling the animal inside was just going to chew its own leg off to get free and come back for more. You would think that a night in a county jail cell, wearing an orange jumpsuit and eating a bologna sandwich on stale bread, would be enough to humble a suburban grandmother. You would think that the shame of being handcuffed in front of the people she had terrorized for years would force a moment of introspection. You would think that facing a felony charge would make her stop, think, and retreat. But that's because you are a rational person. You operate on logic and empathy. You assume that when someone is caught red-handed, they feel guilt. Karen didn't feel guilt. She felt victimized. And the thing about narcissists, true malignant narcissists, is that they cannot process the idea that they are wrong. If reality disagrees with their self-image, they simply invent a new reality. When the facts are against them, they attack the people holding the facts. Karen was released on bail the next morning. Her sister, a woman I had never seen but imagined must be equally miserable, posted the bond. By noon on Tuesday, the gray sedan was back in the driveway across the street. I watched from my living room window as she walked to her front door. She didn't hang her head. She didn't rush inside to hide from the neighbor's stares. She walked with her chin up, sunglasses on, looking like a deposed queen returning to her castle to plot the beheading of the usurpers. The silence lasted exactly 4 hours. Then, the digital offensive began. It started on the neighborhood Facebook group, a page usually reserved for lost cat posters and recommendations for plumbers. A notification popped up on my phone. Karen Whitmore posted in Maple Ridge Community Board. The post was a masterpiece of creative fiction. Dear neighbors, it began. I am writing this with a heavy heart to address the horrifying events of last night. As many of you saw, I was taken away by the police under false pretenses. I want to clear the air before the rumors spread. I was framed. I audibly laughed. Framed? I had her on 4K video swinging a sledgehammer like Triple H. But she continued. Mr. Davis, our resin hero, has been targeting me for months because I dared enforce the community standards he refuses to follow. He has used military-grade technology to fabricate footage, deep fakes, to make it look like I damaged his vehicle. In reality, I went to his garage to inspect a safety hazard, leaking fuel chemicals, that threatened our children, and he attacked me. The police, unfortunately, were swayed by his aggressive demeanor and manipulated evidence. I am the victim of a sophisticated smear campaign by a man who is clearly unstable and suffering from severe, untreated PTSD. I fear for my life. It was insane. It was easily disprovable. But it was dangerous. Within an hour, the comments started rolling in. Most were skeptical. Thank God. But a few, mostly the older residents who didn't understand how technology worked, were hesitant. Deep fakes? Is that possible? Wrote Mrs. Higgins from down the block. I did see him yelling at her once about his dog, commented another. There are two sides to every story, said a third. That phrase is the refuge of the coward. Two sides. No, there aren't always two sides. Sometimes there is a truth and there is a lie, But Karen knew that she didn't need everyone to believe her. She just needed enough people to doubt me. She needed to muddy the waters until the truth was just one option among many. The real blow came that evening. I received a phone call from Sarah, the realtor on the HOA board. Her voice was shaky. "John, I just wanted to give you a heads up," she said. "Karen has been calling the other board members all day. She's threatening to sue the HOA if we remove her from her position before a trial. She claims it's discrimination against a person with a disability." "Disability?" I asked, incredulous. "Since when is being mean a disability?" "She's claiming she had a dissociative episode caused by the stress you put her under," Sarah sighed. "Look, John, she's also filing a restraining order against you. She's petitioned the court saying you threatened her with violence during the arrest." I was standing next to a police officer. I shouted, my calm finally cracking. He was right there. "I know, John. We all know. But a temporary restraining order is almost automatic. If she gets it, you won't be allowed within 100 feet of her. Since you live across the street, that effectively means you can't leave your driveway without risking arrest." I hung up the phone, feeling the blood pulsing in my temples. It was brilliant, in a twisted, evil way. She was using the legal system, the very system designed to protect victims, to harass me. She was tying me up in knots, forcing me to hire lawyers, attend hearings, and defend myself against shadows, all while she sat across the street playing the frail, terrified woman. The smear campaign bled into the physical world. The next morning, I walked out to get the mail. A neighbor, a guy I used to chat with about lawn care, was walking his dog. When he saw me, he abruptly crossed the street to avoid walking past my house. He didn't make eye contact. I went to the local grocery store. I ran into the woman who runs the neighborhood watch. Usually, she's chatty. This time, she gave me a tight, nervous smile and hurried away toward the dairy aisle. I felt the isolation closing in. It's a specific kind of psychological warfare. It makes you question your own reality. Do I look crazy? Do I look dangerous? The worst part was the insurance claim. The USAA adjuster called me back on Thursday. "Mr. Davis, we're processing the claim," he said, sounding hesitant. "But we received a counter notification from Ms. Whitmore's insurance company. They are disputing liability based on her statement that the damage was self-inflicted." Self-inflicted? I gripped the phone so hard the plastic creaked. "She claims you destroyed the car yourself for the insurance money and framed her to cover it up. She's alleging insurance fraud." "I have video," I said through gritted teeth. "I have a police report. I have a confession." "I know, sir, and we believe you. But whenever fraud is alleged, we have to open a secondary investigation. It's protocol. It's going to delay the payout by at least 3 weeks." I hung up and sat on my living room floor, Duke resting his head on my knee. This was attrition. She knew she couldn't win the criminal case. The video was too good, but she could make the process so painful, so expensive, and so humiliating that I would break. She wanted me to move. She wanted to drive me out. She was trying to turn my sanctuary into a prison. That evening, I saw her again. I was checking the cameras. She was standing in her front window, holding the phone to her ear, gesturing wildly. She looked energized. The shame I expected? It wasn't there. She was feeding off the chaos. She was the center of attention, the martyr of Maple Ridge, fighting against the big, bad, scary veteran. I realized then that I had made a tactical error. I had assumed that arresting her would end the fight. But for Karen, the arrest was just the opening bell of the second round. I had treated her like a criminal who feared the law. I should have treated her like an insurgent who uses the population as a shield. I took a deep breath, petting Duke's fur. The yellow level alert in my brain shifted to red. "Okay, Karen," I whispered to the screen. "You want to play the victim? You want to make this about reputation?" I stood up and walked to my office. I pulled out my laptop. I wasn't going to argue with her on Facebook. I wasn't going to shout at neighbors. I was going to do what I did best, gather intelligence, fortify my position, and wait for her to overreach. Because the thing about lies this big is that they are heavy. Eventually, the person carrying them stumbles. And when she did, I would be there to make sure she didn't get back up. But I didn't know just how far she was willing to go. I didn't know that the restraining order and the Facebook posts were just distractions. She wasn't done with the hammer. She still had the key. And the next time she crossed the street, she wouldn't be looking for the car. She'd be coming for me. The smear campaign was draining, but it was a battle fought with words and pixels. I could handle words. I could handle the dirty looks at the grocery store and the whispers at the mailbox. But my gut, that instinct honed by years of sleeping with one eye open, told me that the physical threat hadn't ended with the handcuffs. On Tuesday night, unable to sleep, I found myself in my home office, staring at the glow of my monitor. I was re-watching the footage from the garage attack for the 100th time. The police had a copy, the insurance company had a copy, but I needed to see it again. There was something about the way she entered the garage that had been nagging at me, a subliminal itch I couldn't scratch. I slowed the playback speed to 0.25x. The timestamp read 2:07 and 3 seconds a.m. Karen walked up to the side service door of the garage. In my initial shock, I had assumed she picked a lock or forced a latch. But watching it now in slow motion, I saw the truth. She didn't shim the door. She didn't kick it. She reached into her pocket, pulled out a small brass object, inserted it into the lock, and turned it smoothly. She used a key. The realization hit me like a physical blow. The air in the room suddenly felt thin. How did she have a key? I never gave her one. I never gave anyone one, except my memory flashed back 3 years. Shortly after the HOA was formed, the board passed the Emergency Access Initiative. It was pitched as a safety measure, a requirement for every homeowner to keep a spare key on file in a secure lockbox at the community center, accessible only by board members in case of fire, flood, or medical emergency when the homeowner is incapacitated. I had fought at the time, but eventually I complied to avoid the fines, handing over a spare set for the front door and garage. Karen was the secretary. Karen had access to the lockbox. She hadn't just broken in. She had used the very authority entrusted to her to violate my home. And if she had the garage key, my eyes darted to the front door of my house. The lock was the same brand. The key on her ring likely opened that one, too. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the hardwood. The safety of my home instantly evaporated. I wasn't a fortress. I was in a cage, and the tiger had the keys. I didn't wait. It was 2 a.m. on a Wednesday, but I grabbed my toolbox. I went to the front door and the back door, removing the deadbolts. I didn't have spares, so I improvised. I drilled 3-inch screws directly into the door frames, effectively sealing them shut from the inside. I dragged my heavy oak dining table in front of the main entry. It was a primitive barricade, the kind you build in a hostile village when you expect a breach. I checked the windows. I checked the perimeter sensors. Then I sat in the living room, facing the door, Duke at my feet. "Stay sharp, buddy," I whispered. He looked at me, ears perked, sensing the shift in my energy. He knew. Wednesday passed in a blur of tension. I called a locksmith and had high security, unpickable deadbolts installed on every entry point. The locksmith, a burly guy named Mike, looked at the screws I had driven into frame and raised an eyebrow. "Expecting a siege?" he asked. "Something like that," I said. Night fell. The darkness felt heavier than usual. Across the street, Karen's house was dark, but I knew she was there. The silence from her direction was louder than her screaming. At 10:45 p.m., I turned off all the lights in the house to eliminate my silhouette. I sat in the dark, watching the camera feeds on my tablet. 11 p.m. Nothing. 11:30 p.m. A coyote ran across the cul-de-sac. 11:43 p.m. Duke stood up. He didn't bark. He just stood, his hackles, the fur along his spine, rising into a rigid ridge. He let out a low, vibrating growl that I felt more than heard. My phone buzzed. Motion detected. Front walkway. I looked at the tablet. There she was. She wasn't wearing pajamas this time. She was wearing dark clothes, black slacks and a black hoodie, like a caricature of a burglar. But her face was illuminated by the faint glow of the street lamp, and it was a mask of absolute unhinged fury. Her eyes were wide, white-rimmed, darting around frantically. Her mouth was moving, muttering a silent monologue of hate. And in her right hand, dragging slightly against the pavement, was a brand-new, yellow-handled sledgehammer. She must have gone to the hardware store that very afternoon. She wasn't heading for the garage. The Lamborghini was gone, towed to the repair shop. There was nothing left in there to kill. She was walking straight toward my front door. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my hands were steady. I dialed 911 with my thumb, never taking my eyes off the screen. 911, this is John Davis. I have an active home invasion in progress. The suspect is armed with a sledgehammer and is approaching my front door. I am a combat veteran. I am armed. Please get here before I have to make a choice I don't want to make. Units are rolling, Mr. Davis. The dispatcher said, her voice tight. Is she inside? Not yet. On the screen, Karen stepped onto the porch. She didn't knock. She didn't yell. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the key. I watched as she slid it into lock. She turned it. Click. The lock turned. She grabbed the handle and shoved. But the door didn't move. The new deadbolts held. The reinforcement plate held. She shoved again, harder. Confusion washed over her face. She jiggled the handle violently. She knew the key was right. She couldn't understand why her access, her power, was being denied. Then she snapped. It was instantaneous. She dropped the key. She stepped back, gripping the sledgehammer with both hands. She didn't look like a grandmother anymore. She looked like a demon. Open the door! She screamed, her voice tearing through the quiet neighborhood like a siren. Crash! The hammer slammed into the wood of my front door. The house shook. Dust motes danced in the air from the impact. You ruined my life. Crash! A panel of the wood splintered. I could see the tip of the hammer punch through, a jagged metal intruder entering my sanctuary. Duke was barking now, a ferocious, deafening roar that would send a sane person running. But Karen wasn't sane. Not anymore. She was fueled by the pure, distilled toxicity of a narcissist who has been told no. I know you're in there. You think you can hide? You think you can humiliate me? Crash! The doorframe groaned. The drywall around the hinges cracked. Mr. Davis, are you safe? The dispatcher asked urgently. She is breaching the door, I said. My voice flat. I set the phone down on the table, leaving the line open. I stood up. I didn't draw a weapon. I didn't need to shoot her. I just needed to stop her. I moved the dining table aside. I unlocked the deadbolt from the inside. It sounds counterintuitive, I know. Why open a fortress? Because the door was failing. If she broke it down, she would come in swinging with momentum and chaos. If I opened it, I controlled the engagement. I controlled the timing. I waited for her to wind up for the next swing. I could see her shadow through the frosted glass, rearing back. 3, 2, 1. I threw the door open. Karen was mid-swing, expecting resistance. When the door vanished, her momentum carried her forward. She stumbled over the threshold, the heavy hammer dragging her off balance. She looked up, and for a split second, her eyes met mine. There was no fear in them, only hate. You! She shrieked, recovering her balance with terrifying speed. She raised a hammer, not at the door this time, but at me. This wasn't vandalism anymore. This was attempted murder. I didn't have time to think. I didn't have time to be a neighbor. I reacted. I stepped inside her guard, the way I had been trained to do a lifetime ago. The escalation was over. The impact was imminent. And this time, there would be no letters, no fines, and no warnings. This was hand-to-hand in the hallway of the house I bought to find peace. The moment Karen crossed the threshold, the world narrowed down to a single, high-contrast focal point. The yellow handle of the sledgehammer and the arc of its trajectory. In the movies, fight scenes are chaotic, loud, and drawn out. There's usually a lot of shouting and dramatic pauses. In reality, violence is terrifyingly fast. It happens in the space between heartbeats. And if you know what you're doing, it's quiet. She swung. It was a wild, desperate haymaker, fueled by months of seething hatred and the adrenaline of a woman who had completely detached from reality. She aimed for my head. If that 10-pound block of iron had connected, I wouldn't be telling this story. I'd be a memory. But she made the classic mistake of the amateur. She telegraphed the move. She wound up like a baseball player, putting all her weight on her back foot, screaming her intent before her muscles even fired. I didn't think. I didn't weigh the legal ramifications or consider the optics. My brain bypassed the frontal cortex and tapped directly into the lizard brain, overlaid with 20 years of close-quarters combat. CQC training. Step in. Close the distance. control the weapon arm. As her arms came forward, propelling the hammer, I didn't back away. Backing away gets you killed. It keeps you at the end of the weapon's reach, where the kinetic energy is highest. Instead, I surged forward, stepping inside her guard. I caught her right wrist with my left hand, gripping it with the crushing force of survival instinct. At the same time, I drove my right forearm into her shoulder, stopping her forward momentum dead. The physics were undeniable. The heavy head of the hammer kept moving, but her arm stopped. The weapon wrenched itself from her grip, flying sideways and crashing into hallway drywall with a deafening thud, leaving a hole the size of a dinner plate. She gasped, a sound of pure shock, as if she couldn't comprehend that her power had been stripped away so easily. I didn't stop there. In a situation like this, you don't pause to ask if they're okay. You neutralize the threat until the threat is no longer mobile. I pivoted on my heel, keeping my grip on her wrist, and used her own off-balance momentum against her. I twisted her arm behind her back, a standard law enforcement control hold, painful but not damaging if you don't resist, and drove her toward the floor. Get down! I barked. She hit the hardwood rug first. It wasn't a gentle landing, but it wasn't lethal. I dropped my weight, placing my knee firmly between her shoulder blades, pinning her to the ground. Duke, watch. I commanded. My German shepherd, who had been a vibrating ball of kinetic energy, instantly froze 3 feet away. He lowered his head, teeth bared, emitting a low, continuous growl that sounded like an idling chainsaw. He wasn't attacking. He was guarding. If she moved a muscle toward me, he would end it. Karen went limp for a second. The wind knocked out of her. Then, the realization of her position hit, and she exploded into a frenzy of thrashing limbs. Get off me! Get off me! She screamed into the rug, her voice muffled and hysterical. You're assaulting me! Help! Police! He's killing me! The police are already on the line, Karen, I said, my voice calm but breathless. I leaned closer to her ear so she could hear me over her own shrieking. And this time, you aren't getting a ticket. You just tried to kill me. I was protecting the neighborhood, she sobbed, the fight draining out of her as the reality of my weight on her back set in. You don't belong here. You ruined everything. I didn't answer. I just held her there, watching the front door. The adrenaline began to recede, leaving my hands trembling slightly. I looked at the sledgehammer, lying in the dust of the broken drywall. I looked at the screws I had driven into the doorframe, now bent and exposed. She had really done it. She had crossed the line from nuisance to monster. It took 4 minutes for the cavalry to arrive. It felt like 4 hours. I heard the sirens first, a wailing chorus that filled the cul-de-sac. Then, tires screeching on asphalt, car doors slamming, footsteps pounding up the driveway. Police dropped a weapon. Officer Willow burst through the open door, gun drawn, flashlight cutting through the dim hallway. He swept the room in a fraction of a second, saw me on the ground, saw Karen pinned beneath me, saw the sledgehammer in the wall. He lowered his weapon, but kept it at the low ready. John, I'm secure, I said, not moving. Suspect is restrained. Weapon is neutralized. Willow holstered his gun and pulled out his cuffs. He looked exhausted. He looked like a man who was questioning every life choice that had led him to this specific hallway on this specific Wednesday night. Again, he muttered, shaking his head. She came back. She actually came back. He walked over, grabbed Karen's free arm, and replaced my grip with cold steel. Okay, get up. Let's go. I stood up, backing away, hands visible. Willow hauled Karen to her feet. She looked wrecked. Her hair was a rat's nest. Her black hoodie was covered in drywall dust, and her face was a mask of splotchy red rage and tears. When she saw Willow, she didn't show remorse. She showed indignation. Arrest him, she screamed, spitting saliva. He attacked me. He lured me here. He left the door open. It's a trap. Willow stared at her, his expression utterly devoid of patience. Ma'am, I see a sledgehammer embedded in the wall. I see a shattered door frame. And I see a homeowner who just defended his life. You have the right to remain silent. And for the love of God, I highly suggest you use it. He dragged her out the door. Outside, the scene was chaotic. 3 cruisers were parked on the lawn. An ambulance was idling nearby. The entire neighborhood had spilled out onto the street. This wasn't just gossip fodder anymore. This was a spectacle. Tom was standing by the mailbox, clutching his robe, his face pale. When he saw Karen being let out in cuffs, again, he looked at me. I was standing on the porch, leaning against the broken doorframe, Duke at my side. Tom didn't wave. He just nodded a slow, somber acknowledgement. The reign of terror was over. Willow shoved Karen into the back of the cruiser. She fought him this time, kicking at the door, screaming about lawyers, about conspiracies, about how she owned this street. Willow slammed the door shut, silencing her. He walked back up to the porch, pulling out his notepad. "You okay, John?" "I'm fine," I said, rubbing my shoulder where the impact of the tackle had jarred an old injury. "Just tired." "I bet." He shone his flashlight on the doorframe. She really went for it. She used the key, I told him, the HOA emergency key. That's how she got in the first time. That's how she tried to get in this time. Willow stopped writing. He looked up, his eyes narrowing. She used a key entrusted to her as a board member to commit a felony? Yep. Add burglary to the list, Willow muttered, scribbling furiously. An abuse of authority. An assault with a deadly weapon. An attempted murder. He looked at me grimly. John, I know she made bail last time. But with the weapon, the premeditation, the violation of the restraining order that was being processed, she's not going home tonight. She's not going home for a very long time. Good, I said, because I don't have any more doors to fix. The paramedics checked me out. Blood pressure was high, adrenaline dump was hitting hard, but no physical injuries. They offered to check Karen. 2. I watched from the porch as they opened the cruiser door. She refused treatment, spitting at the EMTs. As they prepared to take her away, Willow walked back to the car. He leaned in the window to say something to her. I couldn't hear it, but I saw her reaction. She slumped back against the seat, staring blankly ahead. The fight had finally left her. The convoy of police cars pulled away, lights flashing, disappearing down the street. The silence that rushed in to fill the vacuum was heavy, profound, and absolute. I stood there for a long time. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a deep, bone-weary exhaustion that comes after combat. My hands were shaking now. I looked down at Duke. He licked my hand, his tail wagging slowly. We held the line, buddy, I whispered. I walked back inside. The hallway was a mess. Drywall dust covered everything. The hole in the wall was a gaping wound. The front door hung crookedly on its hinges, unable to close. I dragged the dining table back in front of the opening. It wasn't perfect, but it would hold for tonight. I went to the fridge, grabbed a cold beer, and sat on the floor in the living room, facing the barricade. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't check my phone. I just sat there, listening to the silence, drinking my beer, and realizing that for the first time in months, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. The shoe had dropped. The hammer had swung, and I was still standing. But I knew the real ending wasn't tonight. The real ending would be in a courtroom, and I intended to be there, front row, center seat, to watch the gavel fall hard as she had swung that hammer. The courtroom was sterile, smelling of lemon polish and stale anxiety. It was a stark contrast to the chaotic, sawdust-choked hallway where our last encounter had taken place. 6 weeks had passed since the night Karen took a sledgehammer to my front door. 6 weeks of legal motions, psychiatric evaluations, and a neighborhood holding its collective breath. I sat in the front row, wearing my good suit, the one I usually save for weddings and funerals. Officer Willow sat next to me, looking sharp in his dress uniform. Across the aisle, Karen sat at the defense table. She looked small. That was the first thing I noticed. The woman who had marched down our street, like a conquering general, who had wielded clipboards and hammers with equal entitlement, had shrunk. Her hair was dull, her designer glasses were gone, and she wore a standard-issue county jumpsuit that washed out her complexion. She refused to look at me. She stared at the table, her hands clasped tightly, trembling. Her lawyer tried his best. He argued for leniency. He painted a picture of a lonely, stressed woman who had suffered a temporary psychotic break due to the changing dynamics of her community. He tried to spin the narrative that I, the scary combat veteran with the loud car, had triggered her. But the judge, a stern woman with eyes that had seen too many excuses, wasn't buying it. The prosecutor played the video. Not just a garage attack, but the second one, the hallway footage. The sound of the hammer splintering the door. The scream of "I'll kill you" echoing through the silent courtroom. When the video ended, the silence was absolute. "Ms. Whitmore," the judge said, peering over her glasses, "in 30 years on the bench, I have rarely seen such a flagrant disregard for the law, for property, and for human life. You didn't just vandalize a car. You invaded a sanctuary. You used your position of authority within a homeowners association to terrorize a resident, stalk him, and eventually attempt to harm him." Karen started to sob. "I just wanted the neighborhood to be nice," she wept. "I just wanted rules." "You didn't want rules," the judge corrected sharply. "You wanted subjects." The gavel fell with a sound that felt like closure. 5 years. 2 counts of felony vandalism. 1 count of burglary. 1 count of assault with a deadly weapon. Mandatory psychiatric treatment. And full restitution for vehicle and the home repairs, which meant her assets, including her pristine house in Maple Ridge Estates, were frozen and likely to be liquidated. As the bailiff led her away, the jingling of the handcuffs sounded like wind chimes. She finally looked at me then. There was no fire left in her eyes, only a hollow, confused fear. She looked like someone waking up from a dream and realizing she had burned her own house down. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I just watched her go. Outside the courthouse, Tom and Sarah from the HOA board were waiting. They looked sheepish. "John," Tom said, extending a hand. "We're sorry. Again, the board voted last night. We're dissolving the emergency key policy effective immediately, and we're instituting term limits. No one gets to be a dictator again." "Good," I said, shaking his hand. "Democracy works better when the leaders don't have sledgehammers." Life in the cul-de-sac changed after that. It wasn't a dramatic shift, but a subtle, warming thaw. The tension that had gripped the street for 2 years evaporated. Neighbors started waving with their whole hands, not just a polite nod. The Berger family across the street let their kids play in the front yard again. The fear of being watched, judged, and fined was gone. Karen's house sat empty for a month. A for sale by state auction sign planted in the perfectly manicured lawn she had obsessed over. Eventually, a young couple bought it. They painted the shutters navy blue and planted wildflowers where Karen had insisted on rigid rows of begonias. They were messy. They were loud. They were wonderful. But the real victory came 8 weeks later. I was in the garage, organizing my tools, when a flatbed truck pulled up to the curb. My heart did that familiar little skip. Not from fear this time, but from anticipation. The driver lowered the ramp. And there she was, the Lamborghini Huracan. USA had come through. They had shipped the car to a specialist shop in Chicago, experts in Italian exotic restoration. The new hood was flawless. The windshield was crystal clear. The paint, that deep midnight blue that looked like the ocean, was polished to a mirror finish. I signed the paperwork and walked around the car. I ran my hand over the fender where the hammer had struck. It was smooth as glass. Cold. Perfect. Better than new, the driver said, handing me the keys. They even tuned the exhaust for you. I got in. The leather smelled rich and new. The start button pulsed red, inviting me. I pressed it. The V10 roared to life. It was a guttural, angry bark that settled into a predatory idle. It was a sound of engineering triumphing over brute force. I backed it out of the driveway. Duke ran out onto the porch, barking happily. I rolled the window down. "Be right back, buddy," I called out. I took the car out to the highway. I didn't drive recklessly, but I drove with purpose. I pushed the throttle, feeling the G-force press me into the seat, listening to the engine scream its mechanical symphony. The wind whipped through the cabin, washing away the last lingering scent of gasoline and drywall dust. As I drove, I thought about Karen. I thought about the energy she had spent hating this machine, hating me, hating the fact that she couldn't control the world. She had destroyed her own life trying to break mine. And for what? The car was fixed. The house was fixed. My peace was restored. I realized then that she hadn't taken anything from me that couldn't be replaced. But she had lost everything. Her freedom, her home, her reputation. She was sitting in a cell right now, while I was doing 80 on an open highway, watching the sunset bleed orange and gold across the horizon. People often mistake vengeance for justice. They think the goal is to hurt the other person. But I learned a long time ago, in places far more dangerous in Ohio, that true victory isn't about standing over your enemy's broken body. True victory is standing in your own home, safe and sound, and realizing the enemy can no longer touch you. I pulled back into the driveway as the streetlights flickered on. The young couple across the street, the ones living in Karen's old house, were sitting on their porch. They saw the car and waved. "Nice ride," the husband called out. "Thanks." I yelled back. I pulled into the garage, my sanctuary. I parked the car in its spot. I walked to the wall and looked at the patch of fresh drywall where the sledgehammer had impacted. I hadn't painted over it yet. I think I might leave it white, a subtle scar to remind me of what happened. I went inside, locked the door with the heavy-duty deadbolt, and sat on the couch with Duke. People think power is about controlling others. That's what Karen thought. She thought power was a clipboard, a rule book, and a weapon. But she was wrong. Real power is discipline. Real power is keeping your head when everyone else is losing theirs. Real power is knowing that you don't have to start the fight to finish it. Karen tried to bring chaos to my door. She tried to drag me down into the mud with her. But in the end, she drowned it alone, and I'm still here, dry, safe, and free. As I sat there, listening to the quiet hum of my refrigerator and the rhythmic breathing of my dog, I finally felt it. The yellow level, alert in my brain, faded to green. The war was over. And the best revenge? The best revenge is living well, driving fast, and never, ever letting the bastards steal your peace. Outro. So, that's the story of how an HOA tyrant totaled my supercar and ended up behind bars. It was a hell of a ride, but I'm glad it's over. If you've ever dealt with a nightmare neighbor or an HOA from hell, let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you enjoyed seeing justice served ice cold, hit that like button and subscribe. Stay safe, stay calm, and remember, never bring a clipboard to a sledgehammer fight. See you in the next one.